In today's show, Krysten Peek from Yahoo Sports joins to talk about the Blazers and the 7th overall pick in the NBA draft. Is Shaedon Sharpe the next Anthony Edwards? Is Dyson Daniels a perfect fit for the Portland Trail Blazers? We got the answers. Let's talk about it. Welcome to Locked On Blazers.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Why don't you make the show your first listen every single day, 5 days a week, available on all platforms, and with fun guests. Like today, we've got Krysten Peek, a NBA draft analyst and just an amateur basketball expert all over the world from Yahoo Sports. Krysten, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. For me, this is the most wonderful time of year. The draft is less than 2 weeks away, and I'm ready. I'm ready for it.
I bet you are. You've been all over. You were at the NBA Combine. You're going to workouts and stuff. You also, last week, released an updated mock draft where the Blazers are selecting G League Ignite's Dyson Daniels. What can you tell us about him and how he's, risen up draft boards during this time?
Dyson, he's 6'6" guard out of Australia. He came over here to play for the G League Ignite. Struggled in the beginning of the season, just trying to get the pacing of the game, dealing with bigger and stronger, older guards playing in the G League. And also when guys take the G League Ignite route, I don't think they understand that they're going to be going head to head against guys that are trying to get back into the league, are trying to, keep food on the table for their families. So there's a different element of intensified just competition in the G League. But by the end of the season, he was finding his way. His shot was falling more consistently. He's very, very smart off the pick and roll, reads the defense very well. And I think that's something that teams have a lot of value in. And then after the draft combine, he had a very good pro day, shot lights out, and he interviewed extremely well. So when you're in that 6 to 10 range for a team and the four guys, that could be potential all-stars, franchise-changing players like Chet Holmgren, Paolo Banchero, Jabari Smith, and Jaden Ivey are already gone, then you're looking for something that is a bona fide fit, someone that's, what you're getting in them, and Dyson kind of fits that mold.
What position is he?
He's a shooting guard.
Can he play up? Because I think that's the question for the Blazers, right? Is like they have guards. It's like they look at him, he's got some skills and some size, but can he play up in the league, or how far away is he from being able to play up?
No, that's the name of the game, right? There are very few point guards who can't go down and swing down and play the two position. And I think the other way around, even when you look at a player like Tyrese Halliburton, before he went to the Indiana Pacers, him and De'Aaron Fox in the backcourt, they were kind of 1 and 2s. And so I think Dyson is one of those kind of just multifaceted guards at the next level, and definitely has the IQ to keep the ball in his hands and bring the ball up and start the offense if needed.
How much stock do you put into the interview stuff? Because everyone who's met Dyson Daniels loves Dyson Daniels. No one who's talked to him is like, I don't know about this kid. Anyone who's met him, and I know you have, really like him. How much do you put into that sort of off-court soft stuff?
It's interesting, right? Because if you're only looking to add just a piece to the franchise, and you're not necessarily swinging for the fences for that, like I said, like game altering player that some teams at the top are, then you just want someone with no drama off the court. They're going to show up and work hard every single night, day in and day out. Dyson is he fits that mold. I think Bennedict Mathurin out of Arizona, that he's someone else that you see starting to creep up because he fits that mold too. And, it's just, at this point, you're not worried about, okay, is this going to make us an NBA championship caliber team? Maybe you are for Portland because you want some support around Dame. But for other teams that are drafting in this range, everyone's going to tank for Victor Wembanyama next year, who the 7'3" out of France. So it doesn't necessarily matter. I guess. Is what I'm saying.
The Blazers maybe picked the wrong cycle of year to be like actively terrible to end the season, because it seems like Wemby next year is going to be the super prize. It's going to get ugly in like March in the NBA next season.
March, December. I'm calling it now. Like there's going to be like 4 or 5 teams that are going to start tanking in December.
Yeah, bad news for Sam Presti is that the Rockets will not be out tanked. They're like, listen, Sam, nice idea, but we will also lose at all costs. This time of year is like, it's hard for me, someone who I'm a draft novelist or whatever. Like I tune in April. I tune in and I'm like, okay, I'll pay attention to the draft. I'll read Krysten Peek stuff and like kind of figure out who's who. How do you make sense, someone who does this full time, of like the smokescreen stuff versus what's real this time of year? How do you balance that?
I would say the teams are always trying to leak information, either in their favor or, in their best interest, or if they don't have a draft pick, then they're sabotaging maybe a team in their conference. So I don't listen to it until maybe the week of the draft. The one thing that I am starting to listen to, which I will be writing on next week, is Jaden Ivey possibly going to Oklahoma City Thunder. I mean, that is a real scenario that could happen. And it's not necessarily the pecking order of Jabari Smith, Chet Holmgren, Paolo Banchero, and then Jaden Ivey. I think we were just talking about Sam Presti. I think Ivey is a player that, Sam Presti would love to invest in. And then maybe you go after a Jalen Duren, a big like Jalen Duren or Mark Williams at 12. So that to me is not a crazy scenario. And I think the closer we get to the draft, I think more people will start to talk about that.
Yeah, Presti doesn't care about your big board. He's doing his own thing. He has never gone with the consensus. Even like the big picks for Presti, like now in retrospect, it's like, oh, great pick with Westbrook. At the time, Westbrook was kind of a weird selection. It was kind of like, that's like the 2009 draft. So my listeners who were like in 3rd grade then, trust me on this one.
Yeah.
Trust me on this one. You mentioned this when we were going back and forth. You were maybe thinking the Blazers had a bad spot at 7. What has changed your mind about that? And why did you initially think that as well?
I did. I initially thought, because I thought the cutoff was at 6 with Shaedon Sharpe and Keegan Murray. But then when I got the feedback from different teams, how much they like Dyson Daniels and how much they like Bennedict Mathurin, I think now the drop off is at 8. And if you're number 9 and deciding, do you want to go with injury prone AJ Griffin, who may or may not have a healthy career, but if he does and he hits, he's a guy that every NBA team wants. He's, a $200 million player, when a second contract comes along, because he's that big guard, can defend multiple positions. But his track record with injuries is a little dicey. So do you take that risk, hoping that he now turns it around and stays healthy enough for 82 games, not only in 1 year, but multiple years down the road?
Right. Or 100 if you're an NBA, if you're like a playoff team, right? You need him for a lot of miles, as we're seeing as we get deep into the NBA playoffs. Like the Celtics were good enough to play games without Robert Williams and Marcus Smart. You need depth. But also you need dudes who could play 100 basketball games. It's a long road. Today's show is brought to you by Truebill. Companies make it hard for you to cancel subscriptions. They do it on purpose. So Truebill is here to make it easier for you to cancel those unwanted subscriptions. On average, people are saving up to $720 a year when they're using Truebill, and it's because Truebill is dedicated to make it incredibly simple for you to cancel those hard to find, hard to track subscriptions. You just link your accounts with Truebill and you can cancel your unwanted subscriptions in one tap. And if it's more than one tap, you're paying for a service. So a Truebill concierge will cancel those unwanted subscriptions for you. I've used Truebill. Under 15 minutes, I had an eyeball on all my digital subscriptions. I could find out what I was spending monthly, what I wanted to keep and what I wanted to get rid of. I found it super, super simple to use, and I think you will too. So start canceling today and don't fall for those subscription scams. Head over to Truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. Go right now. Truebill.com/LockedOnNBA could save you thousands a year. That's Truebill.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, still chatting here with Krysten Peek of Yahoo Sports. Let's continue the conversation. I'm curious, you mentioned Ben Mathurin a couple times. The Blazers worked him out in kind of like a weird secret workout. He did a solo workout here and they didn't do any media, and then he declined to do, usually they do like the team produces some sort of like, look at the workout type of content, but they didn't do that. How much stock do you put into those type of solo workouts for teams and guys making visits like that?
Solo workouts, I think it's more of, the team they've seen him play enough and they've seen him in 2 pro days, first in Chicago and then probably out in LA, where they know what they're getting and they don't need to bring other guys in to see him go head to head. They just kind of want him more one-on-one so they can really focus on him and maybe not get distracted by a Blake Wesley or even a Johnny Davis. And so I don't necessarily, when I see a one-on-one workout, that's not a red flag for me. Ben is actually working out solo for the Indiana Pacers. And also it might be something that his agent said, look, if you want to bring them in, you have to bring them in alone. So we don't know what those conversations are. It's basically like an a la carte of whatever the agent wants to put out there. And it was the same way at the combine. We didn't see measurements from Jalen Duren, who we've been told is undersized. He's not really 6'10". He's more probably 6'8.5", not without shoes, and 6'9". So that would be bad for him. We also didn't see AJ Griffin measure because there were rumblings that he came in a little overweight. So it's basically this like huge Wizard of Oz, whatever the agent wants you to know, that's what you're going to know. And I always love when I see players just come through and they're just like, I don't care. I'm going to do everything. I'm going to talk to the media. I'm going to go through all the combine testings. I'm going to play. Like Josh Christopher last year. He didn't he could have done that, but he said, no, if I'm a first round draft pick, I'm going to show you guys I'm a first round draft pick and I'm going to prove it to you. And he did. He ended up going to Houston in the first round.
Do you think there's value in that? Like a guy like Jalen Williams seems to be the hot riser and he killed it at the combine. And then there's the Shaedon Sharpe side where it's like, I'm not giving you anything. You can watch my AAU tape. Like what are the sort of the two sides of that coin? How do teams weigh them?
Yeah. So when I talked to Jalen at the draft combine after his second game, because he had done enough in the first scrimmage to shut it down and not play the second game. Like everybody could see it. We're like, okay, that's the first round pick. He just made himself millions of dollars in one day at the combine. And the next day he suited up and he played the full scrimmage. And afterwards I said, was there a discussion at all between you and your agent that you were going to sit because you had done enough? And he said, no. I mean, he said, yeah, we had a discussion, but I told my agent, no, I came to Chicago to play. I'm not sitting out. I'm here to play. And I want them to know that I'm ready to play. And everybody else who thinks that was just like a fluke of how well I played in the first scrimmage, I'm going to show them, no, this is who I am as a player. I'm a dog on and off the court. I want to play night in and night out. I'm never going to sit if I have a chance to play basketball. And I'm just like, oh, what a breath of fresh air. Yeah. Then you had Shaedon Sharpe. I cannot for the life of me, and I'm not even kidding you, I cannot for the life of me believe that he did not just simply go through the testing with the vert jump and all that, because he has the best vert out of any player in this draft class. And that could have gotten him some very, very high buzz as a positive. Instead, he sits down with Shams Charania, the only interview he does all draft combine. And he essentially says, I'm staying in the draft without saying I'm staying in the draft. And that ticked off a lot of Kentucky fans because the way the situation when it was handled there. But as someone who's probably seen Shaedon Sharpe in person more than anybody that's covering the draft, more than any NBA exec or scout, he's the real deal. I don't know how much this off the court time, him not playing a year at Kentucky, is going to hurt him. But if he hits in terms of what his upside is, I think, and do not be flabbergasted when I say this, I think he's a better shooting Anthony Edwards if he hits.
All right. I'm flabbergasted. I'll be honest.
Yeah.
I mean,
I know. But in terms of where Ant was at, where Shaedon is now in this pre-draft process and who he was prior coming into this, granted, he had that incredible game at Georgia where he had the best second half of college basketball I think anybody's ever seen. But in terms of where they're at, incredibly athletic, a dog on the court, loves to play above the rim. Shaedon has a better outside jump shot than him. I think Ant talks a little more on the court. Obviously, he talks more off the court.
He
Which we
talks
all
a lot. I
love,
love how much he talks off the
which
court.
we love. Shaedon is like the complete opposite of that. But if he hits his potential, I think we'd look back 3-4 years down the road from now and be like, why was anybody questioning Shaedon Sharpe as a top 5 pick?
Makes sense why you thought the draft really drops off at 7 if you're that high on Sharpe. Like if he's like a top 5, if he's a would have been top 5 guy, but there's some question marks. Like I understand the excitement there. Keegan Murray's the other name you mentioned. I think he's like in some ways the dream selection for Blazers fans because he fits a need, right? They need a 4, they need size desperately, and he can play. What do you think about his NBA potential?
I love Keegan Murray. I mean, anytime this is what I love about how I cover the NBA draft, because I see these players when they're 15 years old, 16,
right,
all the way through high school. I cover them on the AU circuit, high school circuit, McDonald's All-American, all the way up. And then I see them in college. And in Keegan's, in his instance, I've seen his game progress in a very positive way each level. Like he only had 1 or 2 Division I offers before he decided to commit to Iowa, right?
Wow.
Him and his twin brother. And then you see the jump from freshman to sophomore year, and it was a massive jump. Same with Johnny Davis. And once you see that progression, you know that they're not plateauing like this. They're just going to continue to rise. So for an NBA team to see that and to see how productive he was in college basketball, leading the country in scoring or leading the Big Ten in scoring, is a massive upside. And it's very positive for NBA teams looking at that 5 to 8 range. And for the Blazers specifically, I mean, like you said, everybody's looking for that big player that can extend their game to the perimeter. He can score at every level. I think he'd be a great additional piece to Dame. Maybe not necessarily putting all the pressure on Dame to make plays with the shot clock coming down, and it's sort of like that inside out forward, that swing forward that you want in the NBA.
Yeah, that they haven't had in, I don't know, 8 years. It's been a minute since they've had it. He's 22. Are you worried about him being 22? I feel like we treat 22-year-olds like ancient. They're old as dust at this stage.
I don't think so. The way I see it, like he's 22. Chris Duarte was 24, 25 coming in last year, and he's just more ready for the game. So you're going to see someone that's able to impact the game right away. Now, what's his shelf life look like? We don't know. But we've got, I mean, Chris Paul is 37, LeBron is 37, Steph and Clay are 33, 30. Like people are playing farther into their 30s than I think people are kind of giving this like whole draft scenario of like, no, they have to be 18, 19, or 20 in order to see their upside and growth.
Right, because if it used to be like if he turned 29, it's over. It's like it's done for him. And I think we've progressed to a point where the best players, and maybe LeBron has changed our perception of this, the best players play well past their 32nd birthday at a very high level. So yeah, I'm with you. I mean, like, I don't know. I don't want to call a 22-year-old old.
Definitely not.
Yeah, like, come on. On Friday, Tari Eason of LSU worked out for the Trailblazers in a group workout. I think he was someone who was higher in sort of mocks and then has slipped down. What do you like? What do you like about him? What have you seen from him? And why do you think he's kind of slipped in most people's minds?
I really like Tari. I think defensively, he's probably one of the best defenders, especially in the lottery. Him and Jeremy Sohan really have high upside defensively in terms of the ability to guard positions 1 through 4. With Tari, I think maybe one of the main reasons he's slipping is he doesn't necessarily have a consistent outside jumper yet. He's more of the, really exciting transition player that's going to try to dunk it on you every time he has the ball. But listen, at the combine, when he talked to media, he was very well spoken. I was assuming that he interviewed well for teams, but then I was hearing otherwise, just in different case scenarios with different teams. But when you are a dog on the court and a team is just looking for that maybe second tier player or that coming off the bench just to give your starters a rest, I think Tari would be excellent in that rotation, that second rotation. And someone, once his outside jumper starts to develop, he's going to be a productive pro. Remember, like we all said the same thing about LaMelo Ball.
Right.
His jump shot, he can't score. He only averaged 25% from three in the NBL. What is he going to do at the NBA level? And then he was rookie of the year. So anytime I see a player that struggles with their outside jumper, I always give them that grace period because there is room for development at the next level for that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what you think, but I think it's the easiest skill to actually develop in the league. Like shooting is a skill you can get better at, where other things maybe are not as easy.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Like your feel might not get much better. Like it gets a little better, but like you can take 1,000 standstill jumpers and become a better standstill jump shooter. It's like you could get there. Today's show is brought to you by Bet Online. More lines, more props, more odds than ever before. The NBA Finals still going strong. The NHL playoffs rolling along as they head towards their conclusion. You got soccer all over the North American continent with the MLS and the NWSL. Whatever else you're in for, golf, tennis, combat sports, you're going to find more lines, more props, more odds than anywhere else. So don't wait. Take advantage of this fun offer today. Go to Bet Online where the game starts. Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. Still listen to Locked On Blazers. I want to play you the rest of my conversation with Krysten Peek of Yahoo Sports as we wrap up our chat about the Blazers and the NBA draft. A couple other names I want to throw at you that have worked out for the Blazers. You mentioned AJ Griffin. Is it just medicals with him?
I think so. I think that's my only reserve.
Sure.
And when teams talk to me, I said the same thing that I told you, but since I've seen him for so long, it's
right.
Like I know him as a player that's injured more than he's healthy. But
right.
If he takes care of that, then he is going to be probably the steal of the draft. So how do you weigh that?
Right.
I'm glad I don't have to make that decision.
Yeah, I've said this a bunch. And it's a results-based business. Like you will get fired in the NBA if it doesn't turn out. It happens every year, but like I can just talk about process kind of vaguely because I'm not going to get fired from podcasting if I whiff on if I whiff on Keegan Murray. No one's going to come take the podcast away from me. I'll have to, my other shortcomings may lose me the podcast. Jalen Duren worked out for the Blazers. Just in general, do you think the value of centers in this draft is being diminished a little bit? Obviously, there's some big guys at the top of the draft, but do you think like true fives are kind of dropping a little bit?
They are. I mean, I would say after the big three of Chet, Paolo, and Jabari, you'll see Jalen Duren get picked up and then also Mark Williams. I think that'll just depend on like team preference on the two of them because Mark is a little bit older, more of a rim runner, a rim protector. Jalen has more of an old school back to the basket game, is a phenomenal passer out of the double team and already has like an NBA ready frame at 250 pounds. And he just turned 19 years old. So will he impact the game immediately next year? I don't think so. I think it's more of a 1 to 2 year down the road, similar to what we saw with DeAndre Ayton in Phoenix and how it just took him a couple of years before he was that guy and the center. So I see that more happening with Duren. And Mark Williams, he'll be like one of the best rim runners in the NBA at some point.
Yeah, I really like Mark Williams. Yeah, I thought he was this is like, I'm a Carolina guy, so this is like me hating, but I thought his freshman year he was the best player at Duke. Like I thought he was the best player on their team. Well,
that was a bad year, his freshman year, which I'm sure you loved.
I still love it. Yeah, I'm it's great. I'll love to relive it. Just like a theoretical question before I get you out of here. How do you balance fit versus best player available? Like obviously if you're in a certain situation, you just take the best player ever. But for a team like the Blazers, they kind of need help. How much do they balance just absolute best player on the board versus fit with their roster?
I will always say this. If you're in the top 10 and you're looking for best fit and the best player available doesn't fit that, then trade down to the team that wants that best player available. So if you want size and you're sitting at 7, but don't necessarily want to take Jalen Duren or Mark Williams and Keegan Murray is off the board, then trade down for a team that wants Dyson Daniels or Ben Mathurin or any of that. Although I think Ben Mathurin would be a great fit.
Yeah. Can he play 3? Like, can he play small forward in the NBA?
I think so. I mean, he's 6'6", 6'7". I don't know if that's undersized or not, but in terms of like how his first step off the wing is insane. He's really good at getting downhill and creating for others. Defensively, I mean, he needs a little bit more work in terms of guarding the perimeter off the pick and roll. He's gotten caught a few times in college, but I think he's someone that you could plug and play right away alongside Dame.
Well, there you go. I've kind of pitched Mathurin as maybe like a really reasonable target. And I think some of my listeners there's been some resistance here on Locked On Blazers. So
listen, you can't, in my mind, you cannot go wrong. If Keegan Murray is there, take him. I would say the only player I could imagine the Trailblazers being like, let's think about a trade is if Shaedon Sharpe's still there.
Right.
At 7. So that would be my only scenario if I was in the front office, where I would start to entertain other phone calls from different teams. Just because
he could get you some value, and he's like, he's a guard. Is that why? Like,
I think
fit-wise?
so. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because like he's such a tantalizing upside guy, and everything we've heard about Joe Cronin is like he loves an upside swing. So it's like, Joe, do it. Don't trade, do it. If people are looking for more of you, Krysten, where can they find you?
I am on Twitter. I'm on Instagram at Krysten Peek. And then you can always read all my work on Yahoo Sports. I cover the draft year round. I cover high school and AAU, anything Bronny James, I'm always having to write. And then sometimes I dip into, NBA stuff with the playoffs. So just anything basketball at all 3 levels.
Yeah, I'll link to your latest mock draft in the episode description for this episode, because it's got a blurb on what the Blazers might do in the latest intel there. And make sure you read more of Krysten's work. Krysten, thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Dear listeners, come back. We got more shows later this week. It's 5 days a week, wherever you get podcasts. So make it your first listen, and then tell your friends to do the same. And then by the time you get to lunchtime, you'll have something to chat about. You'll be able to talk all about Shaedon Sharpe's upside and Dyson Daniels' ball handling skills. Sounds like a good day. So make it your first listen. Come back and do it again soon. Appreciate you listening. Talk to you soon.